Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Neville and welcome to Selective Imagery. Hello and welcome to Thanks for the Memories. This series is about sharing memories, many that we have put aside but get resurrected when we stumble across the old camera our mom or dad used to take pictures of us as a child. Maybe we inherited some of Grandpa's old gear that we just stumbled upon when cleaning out the attic. These old and sometimes not so old cameras I talk about hopefully stir up fond memories you have that you kind of locked away inside yourself for a while. My mom was the family photographer from the Kodak Brownie camera, an 8mm movie camera with the light bar that could seemingly scorch the earth, to the Kodak Pony 4 35mm viewfinder camera that she let me use when I was very young. The Polaroid land cameras, the Kodak Instamatics. My life was full of cameras and of course photographs. One of two songs that stuck in my head from my youth was Kodachrome by Simon and Garfunkel and Jim Croce's Photographs and Memories, where the first lines of his song are, "Photographs and memories, Christmas cards you sent to me, all that I have are these to remember you." Hopefully these vintage camera discussions/reviews help bring back some memories for you or stir your passion to acquire an old camera to step back a bit and be more selective with your photographic endeavors. Enjoy the video. Hi folks, this is Jeff Neville for Selective Imagery, and this is going to be a Thanks for the Memories episode, part 10. And we're going to be talking about using the 1995 Nikon AF DC Nikkor 135mm f2D lens on the Nikon Zf. So I'm just going to hold up the lens quickly for you to see. Okay. All metal construction, very solidly built. Oh, looky here. Not the image you want to see twice, right? Wonderfully made lens. It's considered for many one of the best portrait lenses Nikon ever made. And with the manual attributes using the Zf, manual focus attributes using the Zf, I thought it was time to throw this lens on that body with the FTZ adapter and go out and take some images. Now, this particular lens was superseded by the non-D version, which was introduced in 1990. This came out in 1995. And what the D means is it provides distance information and communicates between the lens and the camera body. And you do have some electrical contacts here on the lens. Okay, this is an autofocus lens, but it's being a D version, it's screw drive, so you don't have any adapters out there right now for adapting this for full autofocus control on a Nikon Z body. So it's going to be used in manual autofocus mode only. That's the only way it's going to work. And the importance of the D when they came out with the D versions of these lenses was providing that distance information allowed the camera to be more accurate with its exposure calculations, especially if you were using this with a flash. And this is, like I said, considered a prime portrait lens, so many people are going to be using it with a flash. And it also, because it had that distance information, it supported what Nikon had on some of their bodies, what they called it 3D matrix metering. Earlier camera bodies just had what they called matrix metering, but when you have the distance information, it now can support the 3D matrix metering system. Okay, I'm going to mount the lens on the Nikon Zf, which I've already put the F to Z adapter on it. So here we go. And this lens is pretty heavy, but you're always going to be cradling it, you know, with your left hand. And as long as you have the optional grip on this body, it's not an issue at all. Because like I said, you're going to be cradling it and you're going to be manually focusing anyway. Now, you do get, because this lens isn't a real old lens like from the 60s, and you do have electrical contacts on this lens body, other than not being able to autofocus, you will have EXIF data that will show up when you're processing your images in Lightroom or whatever you're using. You're going to see, it'll recognize it as the 135mm f2, that you're in manual focus, and it'll show your f-stop and your shutter speed and your ISO. So you're going to have that information. And on the ZF, you will have the, you won't be able to do subject detection, or it won't identify the eye of the subject because it is not a modern day manual focus lens designed for the Z mount, but you'll be able to use the focus peaking feature. Hit the OK button while you're looking through the viewfinder, zoom right in, tweak your focus peaking a little bit more, and release the shutter button and take your picture, and you would be amazed the quality of the images that this lens creates and the beautiful bokeh that you get from this lens. It is absolutely amazing for a lens of its era, because it's basically what, let's see, 85, 29 years old. No, 39 years old. Okay, so it's really an incredible lens. Well worth the money if you can pick one up, and you could find one of these relatively cheap, and we'll get into that a little bit more later on. Let's see what else we want to say about this. When you mount the lens to the camera, your camera's probably already been set up from a previously Z mount lens, where you're either using autofocus single, autofocus continuous mode. But as soon as you put this lens on the body, it automatically changes the body setting to manual focus. Okay, so you don't have to go into the menu system to go and change that. Now, we'll talk in a little bit about the setup that you have to do in the menu system using an old lens like this. There is a minor thing that you need to do, and it's not a big deal. It's not hard to do, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, now we're going to go over the lens description, working our way from what is located closest to the body and working our way to the front of the lens. So you have your aperture ring adjustment, which is f2 to f16. Now, when you use this lens on a Z-mount body, you need to stop the lens down all the way to f16, which will be an orange color, and then let's see if I can find it here. In this area, there's a switch. Okay, you see a little dot there. There's a switch. And you need to flip that up and basically, push it down, and it locks the aperture ring so that it can't accidentally get bumped and be changed, because you need to have that at f16. And what that does is it allows the camera to set your f-stop and display the correct f-stop in your viewfinder. So if you do not actually do that properly, the camera is going to come up with a message and tell you that you need to do that before you can actually take any pictures, in case you forget to do it. Now you have two rows of f-stop numbers. One row is smaller font, which is closest to the lens body, and you got one that's a larger font. Well, you say, well, why do we have two rows of f-stops? Well, you have that because on older SLRs that were not able to electronically, recognize your f-stop information. Say you had this, on an old Nikon F or something. You would have on the pentaprism, you would have a little window that basically, when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're going to see your f-stop in the viewfinder, but it's actually because you have a little window that's looking down and viewing that lower row of f-stops and relaying that information into the viewfinder when you look through it. So that's why you had two rows of f-stops. So we'll move up, and you now have a distance window here. When you're focusing, going to tell you what distance you're at, and then you have you have your center index line, which that's how you see what distance you're at, and then you have a line on each side with a 16 under it, so that's showing you your depth of field when you are set at f16. So you only get that information when you're stopped down all the way. So your next ring that you have a button here that you have to depress. This button allows you to rotate this ring, and you can see the indicator marker here, little triangle. That's what you set whether you're going to be in autofocus mode or manual focus mode. But the ring will not turn unless you depress this button first, and then you can move it back and forth. And we're going to have that in the manual focus mode. Then you have your focus ring. Then you have basically a band here that doesn't move. It just says defocus image control, and it has an index line on it. Above that, you have another index line that's wide. It's wider than all these other dots. So when you have those two lined up, the defocus image control is basically turned off. If you want to activate it, you have to depress this button and rotate the ring. And when you look at that ring, you'll see you have f-stops repeated on either side of that index line. Let me get it so it's lined up here and turned off. And I'm having a hard time doing this when I'm doing everything backwards. But it's numbered from F2 to F5.6. And you have the letter R over here, you have the letter F over here. And what that does is basically, it's kind of a misnomer that they call it defocus image control. It's really controlling your bokeh. It's making it a little bit softer, a little bit nicer, And the F and the R represent, are you going to optimize your out of focus area in the front of your focus point, of everything in front of your focus point, or everything behind your focus point, therefore the letters F and R. So we will get into, what you set this up for, but basically, if I'm at F4 and I want to use this ring and I want to optimize my out of focus area, I'm going to depress this and I'm going to move it towards the F, and I'm going to put it on F4. If I want to optimize my out of focus areas behind that focus point, I'm going to turn this the other direction and line it up on the F4 towards the R for the rear or background out of focus areas. And when I have the index lines lined up, then that ring does not do anything. And I can tell you right now, This is an exceptionally high quality, sharp lens, especially you stop it down a stop or two, and it is tack sharp. It's tack sharp. And I will have some references to some comparisons, like, okay, how does this compare to a Plena lens? Well, I don't know. I don't own the Plena lens. I plan on getting it soon. However, I've watched, dozens of reviews on it. I've read all the specs on it. I know what everybody says it does do, what it can do. And so I'll talk about that a little bit and answer the question, is this the affordable Plena lens? And we'll leave it at that, okay? And we'll move on a little bit from here. And okay, the only other thing to talk about with this lens is it has a built-in lens hood. Okay, like I said, this is all metal. You pull this up, pull this ring up, you now have, a built-in lens hood. When you don't need it, that's hard to do it when you got to push it perfectly straight. And you can, pull it all the way back and you're not using it. You want to use it, you pull it straight out and you got a lens hood. And that would be something that would be kind of neat to have on modern day lenses. It's an art that's gone away, unfortunately. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about this defocus image control, or bokeh control is what it really is. And as I said, it only affects the out of focus areas. Either if you're focused on a person's face, that it adjusts the out of focus areas in front of the person's face, or the out of focus areas behind the person's face. So it's foreground or background. And they label it front and rear on this ring. Okay. Now, the correct way, because there's a lot of confusion in the YouTube world about how this lens works, and you could misuse it to get some interesting effects. There's no doubt. We'll talk about that in a second. But its original intent is, and use the example as if you had for exposure, you had your f-stop at f4, then you decide, are you going to want to enhance the bokeh in the foreground element or the background element, and you adjust this ring so that you align it up at f4, either towards the R for your background or the F towards the foreground, the front of your subject. And the key thing is you focus on your subject, you focus the lens after you have changed the setting. Okay, that is how it's meant to be used. And I'll tell you right now, from having taken a whole bunch of pictures, a lot of pictures, both of flowers and plants and street photography, and we'll talk about a little interesting moment when I share some of these photos, and we'll just say the change is extremely subtle. I mean, when I reviewed images where I took a shot with the defocus image control turned off, and then I went and I used it, I did not see a significant difference. There was a slight change. Okay, it's very subtle, very subtle. Now, what some people do, which is really not the intent, is if you make the mistake and you say you're at f4, you're looking at your subject, you focus on it, And then you say, I'm going to change my defocus image control and adjust it for the rear or the background, and I set it to f4, and I go and take the picture. If my subject I'm on a person's face, it's going to be blurry. Okay, you have to do the focusing after you've set the defocus control ring to match your aperture that your camera is set at for exposure. Camera's at f4, set the defocus ring, foreground or background, F or front and rear, set it to match the f-stop, focus, then take the picture. If you focus before you turn this ring and then you adjust it and take the picture, your subject's going to be out of focus. Now, you can do that intentionally. You could play with this and have a lot of fun. You could sit there, like I said, focus on your subject. You're at f4, you focus on your subject. You could take that ring, turn it all the way to 5.6, turn it down to f2, go front and rear, and just see what the effect is, because you can actually see it through your viewfinder with a mirrorless camera. Okay, that's something that you couldn't do if you're using it on a film camera. You can't see the effect. And basically, if you go like real out of whack with it, well, let's say you had your f-stop at f2, and you go and you adjust the ring to 5.6. It's going to be a soft focus image. Your subject's not going to be sharp, and everything else is going to be really blurry. And maybe that gives you an effect that you want, but that really was not the intent. Was to add this feature to optimize your bokeh a little bit more, foreground and background, not to use it as a soft focus lens, which you can do. I mean, obviously you're the creator. You can use this ring any way you please, and you're not going to get arrested if you use it in a method that isn't described in the manual. Now, the thing to talk about this lens are there negatives? Well, this lens, I could put it on my f4, which is behind my head here on the Nikon stand, my f4S. I could put this on that body, and I'm going to have full autofocus because that body supports screw drive autofocus lenses. Okay. Obviously, on the Z body, I don't have that option. I have to manually focus everything. But some have reported that the autofocus on this lens with the appropriate body is slow. That if you were trying to, take pictures of people walking, on a sidewalk, you'd have a hard time getting a sharp image. I can't vouch for that one way or the other. I mean, I found it to be relatively fast, but maybe it is slow in comparison to other AFD lenses. But I think if you have the appropriate shutter speed, I feel that you would be able to take a picture. Maybe not somebody running by you, but depending how fast they're running. But I think somebody just doing a casual stroll, you should be able to capture that. But some people stated in their reviews that stick to still images. And this lens, also is a great lens to use for landscape shots. Many a time, you do your traditional wide angle shot for a landscape, and then you want to compress your image and focus on part of the mountain or a certain tree or whatever. And a lot of people will use either a 24 to 120 or 70 to 200 zoom lens to compress the image, bring the background closer, and this being a small telephoto lens can have the same effect and give you a beautiful result. So negatives, autofocus speed. For me on this body, it's irrelevant because I have to manually focus it. It doesn't have VR, but you are using the VR in the body. Okay, I shot images. Some of the images I took were all the images I took that you'll see upcoming were taken with my ISO set at ISO 100, and I dealt with that ISO. I just wanted to keep the ISO low, and in some cases I took shots at 1/15 of a second, and they came out perfect. And I'm an old guy. I mean, I'm not, like this, but I'm sure I'm not quite as steady as I was when I was 20. But I still shot at 1/15 of a second, and it worked out well. You do have, especially at low apertures like f2, you will have some noticeable chromatic aberrations, which is basically an outline of color along the edges of certain objects in a photograph. It could be, a prime example would be tree branches with a dark sky in the background. You may have like a blue line across the edge of the branch, and there are some software settings that you could use to eliminate or minimize that effect. Or sometimes what I'll do is you see it more when you're not in the brighter part of the day, is I'll just change my color temperature slightly and warm up the image, and I can make that effect disappear 90% of the time, but I am changing, making the image look like I took it later in the day, which may bother you. That may not be what you want, so then you have to like fool around with software adjustments to try to get rid of that condition. So then you have your camera setup. So we'll talk about that. There's not a lot you have to do with the camera, but I'm going to turn the camera on. You are going to have to go into the setup menu, and you go down to where it says non-CPU lens data. And if you have not done this before, it'll default and it'll say number 1, as in lens number 1. And then when you tab over to the right, you'll see 3 pieces of information. One is the lens number. Like I said, if you've never done it before, it'll be lens number 1. The second is you have to put in your focal length for the lens. So this is a 135 millimeter lens. You set it for 135 millimeter. And this is maximum aperture. So you put down f2. And what that does is the camera now knows what lens you have on it, because that information is not shared electronically, okay, when you hook this up. But once you do that, you will have EXIF data that's valuable. You'll see when you look at the file, when you're processing it, it'll say focal length 135 millimeter f2. It'll say manual focus. You'll have your ISO, you'll have your shutter speed, you'll have your f-stop. Okay, so the information that you want will be there. If you were using a 60s lens on this camera that doesn't have electrical contacts, then you're not going to have EXIF data, much in terms of EXIF data at all. You'll have your ISO because you're setting that, with the camera body, but everything else you won't. And so I think that's about it. You set that up, and if you forgot to set your aperture ring to f16 and lock it, which I talked about earlier, when you look through the viewfinder, you depress the shutter button halfway down, you're going to get a message that says set and lock the lens to the minimum aperture setting, and then it says largest f number. So it tells you, okay, you got to set it, stop it down to f16 and lock it. Now you can use it on your camera body. So it's kind of foolproof. It knows what if you did not do that step earlier. One last thing here. The lens accepts 72 millimeter filter sizes, and we're now going to move forward into the video and show you some still images taken with this lens. and we hope you enjoy them. There'll be some commentary as we go through those images, and then I'll have a little conclusion at the end. And so enjoy the pictures. Okay, you're going to see a series of images, and each image is going to have the shutter speed and the f-stop used for it. These initial images are from Broadway at the Beach, which is a venue where you have a whole bunch of different shopping experiences, restaurants, Hard Rock Cafe, amusement park rides, all sorts of things that you can enjoy. Certain times of the year they're shooting fireworks, and it's a lot of fun. It's great family entertainment. You know, good for a day or a couple days of hanging around, and you can stop on any of these images. I'm not showing them for a long period of time to try to keep this video a little shorter, but you can see the information. And one thing to make note of is, in some cases, you're going to look and you're going to say, why did I shoot at 1/15th of a second at some point in time? Well, I wanted to see how well the image stabilization worked, the VR worked in body on the Zf, because there is no VR on this lens, and I was able to shoot at 1/15th of a second, nail the focus. I also maybe used some strange shutter speeds in other cases, or f-stops in other cases, but I did this because I'm basically pushing the lens a little bit, trying some unorthodox settings, because I want to see what the result is. So in many cases, I may not have shot a certain image at the shutter speed or the f-stop that you see on the screen. So I'm just letting you know that ahead of time. But this lens is so sharp that I could zoom in on it. I normally only zoom in on an image when I'm going through my post-processing at 100%. I'm not a pixel peeper. I'm not going to sit there and look and say, oh, when I'm at 400x, I see a flaw. It's like, good and dandy, good for you, good that you found it, but you're never going to see it on your print, so get over it. So I usually don't look past one, looking at it at 100% magnification, but in this case I made an exception because of what the high quality was going to be of this lens. So I looked at 200%, and I was simply amazed. I got a little story here with the pictures you're going to see of this young woman. She stopped me, saw me with a camera, asked me if I would take a picture of her and send it to her. We had a discussion. Next thing you know, we got an agreement. She's going to model for me for a while. We're going to go around the park. I'm going to take pictures of her. I'm going to provide those pictures to her, which I did the same day for her portfolio. And it gives me, at least I could say, I used a portrait lens with a person, which you want to do if you're shooting a portrait lens. So she was, I told her she had to have been a model at some point. She knew how to pose. She knew how to, gracefully move her arms around, look very relaxed. We were very comfortable with each other shooting. And I think it was a wonderful experience for both of us. And I helped her out and she helped me out. And it was fantastic. Had a great time. So her name was Tara. So Tara, if you're watching, thanks again, once again, for helping me out that day, and I'm glad you loved the images, and take care. So here we are for the final conclusion of this video. I hope you enjoyed the still images I shared with you. So the question is this a cheap substitute for the 135mm f1.8 Plena Z-mount lens? In reality, the answer is no. The Plena is exceptionally sharp, corner to corner at all apertures. It has beautiful bokeh, foreground and background, even in the corners. Minimal cat eye bokeh, nice circular bokeh balls. I mean, exceptionally low vignetting with this lens. You have advanced coating technology, including the fluoride coat. It's professionally weather sealed to the hilt. It has the programmable control ring, which obviously is a nice thing to have on the Z lens. It is recorded to have little to no lateral chromatic aberrations at all. I mean, so you're not dealing with that. Fast autofocus, with 2 stepper motors in it. You have reduced ghosting and flaring. You have the MESA, amorphous, and Arneo coating technologies, which is really Nikon's. It works well in backlight, exceptional build quality, and in the best of coatings that Nikon has for their lenses. And you just go like, wow, exceptional. And in the end, you're looking at a lens that came out in 1985. That's 7 lens elements in 6 groups. It's a multi-coated lens. It has 9 diaphragm blades, but you have the high-tech marvel of the Plena with 16 lens elements in 4 groups, including 4 ED elements, 1 SR, 1 is spherical with 11 diaphragm blades, and as previously noted, the best of lens coatings available by Nikon. So, but there's always a but, the 135mm f2 has the defocus control. You can cheat, use it as soft focus if you want, and you can buy it in, very good plus to excellent condition for under $1,000, probably closer to $700 or $800 if you look hard enough, versus $2,500. So it's it's still a fantastic lens to use. Produces great images. One of Nikon's all-time best classic portrait lenses that you can get. It's not clinically sharp edge to edge, wide open. You do have to stop it down a couple stops. But this is a lens that a lot of photographers would say has character. Okay, not all photographers want a clinically sharp edge-to-edge result when they're doing portraits, outdoor portraits. They like things to be maybe a little soft around the edges. Now, I will say from everything I've read, yes, you have a wide open with the Plena lens. You have a sharp subject, but you have a wonderful out-of-focus foreground and background, and it is definitely the exception to the typical rule of versus some of the other glass that's out there that Nikon makes, and it's a lens that has character as well. There's no doubt about it, and but in the end, what do I think of this lens? Hey, it gets a thumbs up, man. It gets a thumbs up. So if you're lucky enough to find one of these at a decent price, or you just simply don't have the budget to plunk down $2,500, don't rule this lens out. They actually, today's February 18th that I'm recording this. Is going to be a while before I put everything together, but as of this date, Nikon USA had a refurb model that was being sold for $1,100. So if you want something with a bit of a warranty on it and know that they went through the whole thing, pick that lens up for $1,100. You're still saving. You're saving, more than 50% of the cost of a Plena, and maybe it's something that will satisfy your need and keep your wallet a little bit thicker at the same time. So that's it. That's my conclusion, and until next time, enjoy life, capture some of it, my friends. We'll see you again. Thank you for watching my channel. I really appreciate it. Please give me a like and leave a comment, pro or con. Just please be respectful. And if you really enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. And remember my motto: enjoy life, capture some of it, get out there and get some of your best images, irregardless of the genre that you choose to shoot. Take care and God bless.